received a really well-written business plan for how to exploit the Tremors franchise from a fan. And I always read it and I go, this makes perfect sense. And I say, please send this to Universal.
I mean, basically, I think the bottom line is lack of respect. They think it's some cheesy knockoff piece of shit that they're making money off of, and they probably laugh at all of us and put $190 million in some giant pointless piece of crap. You know, I think that's the reality. I think, really, don't get me started. When the world is run by lawyers, we're all seriously fucked. So that's that.
Here's a question right here. I've been watching this program.
Okay, sorry.
And it's right under the screen.
You can't see it, yeah.
Well, of course, different parts of the company work different ways now, but back when it was the series and Tremors 4, you guys had a lot of creative control on that. Were there ever plans to tie the world together? Because you did a great job at that throughout the different films. Were there plans to tie the series and future episodes and future films together? Like, the first thing that comes to mind is there's mine shafts, obviously, in both. So is that related in any way?
Were the mine shafts related? I didn't quite follow it.
Were there plans to tie future films and the television series together?
Yes, to the extent that we always did it. No matter what form we were presented with, we always wanted to create a world that was all contiguous and interconnected. That was always the goal.
The Tremors cinematic universe, right?
That's it. Yes.
On the cover of Tremors 2, it depicts 3 monsters, but they don't make any sense to anything that's in any of the films.
There are multiple divisions at Universal. Well, we hated the first monster. We hated the one from the original movie because they took a tentacle. But what we told them, you can't show the monster. The monster's a big surprise. They think it's a snake through half the movie. They said, okay, how about a tentacle?
With teeth.
With teeth. And by
in a really
Tremors.
good comment, he said, what makes everybody keep coming back 30 years after this? I watched this film as a younger gentleman. Getting to see it here on the big screen, sitting here. One thing I'd love to say to the writers, the directors, the people who made this film, I think what keeps everybody coming back is the way you guys told this story with what you had to work with, the budget, regardless, the actors that you had. There's something very special that I think is trying to be recreated each time with the Tremors 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 that you can't necessarily pinpoint, that is still relevant. This movie stands the test of time. It really does.
Thank you.
And this whole area that we're in, we're all here for the Lone Pine Film Festival because we're kind of celebrating the area, but celebrating this movie that showcases this area. But watching this movie stand alone, it's awesome. To answer your question earlier, that's what people keep coming back for. Because you can't pinpoint it. There's no handbook on it. People just do this. And they don't know why. And all you guys made that possible. So we're all trying to figure out like what the magic potion is. And we do this in sequels and whatnot. But congratulations for making something that is worth talking about 30 years later.
Thank you.
They did a lot of good research. It was realistic, the way, like
100%.
yeah, Mr. Gross, the way he handled, everything, handled the guns and everything. It was just realistic, and that's just one example of why it's such a great movie, I think, as well. It's real.
Thank you. That's another goal. We figure the monsters, as Brent said earlier today, the monsters are the weird part. Everything else should be real. Okay, let's see. Well, we got more.
I'm sorry. Did Bert have an actual job? I've often wondered this, as anti-government as Bert Gummer is. Were you living off the government?
That's a great question.
Bert have an actual job? This is something, when I spend too many days at home, my wife asks. You have an actual job? What are you still doing hanging around the house? We're not entirely sure how Bert, he was, he made some money along the way, and I think we may have discussed that a long time ago.
We did it with.
But had basically,
I mean, if silver mines were really, I mean, if that was a lot of, yeah, that went a long way.
yes, as Steve said, there were some clues in Tremors 4. That is to say, there was a silver mine, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was a silver mine, and which was finally opened, and his grandfather made a pile, and I think Bert was, what do they call them, Blaze? No,
Trust fund.
Yeah. Trust fund.
Trust fund.
Okay.
Trust fund survival.
Who eschewed Wall Street and even Main Street, and went on to live on his own.
Thank you.
So he had a pile.
That's what we think, yeah. And then that's
And
what he does.
and a film like Tremors, where there's so many practical effects and it's like filmed in this kind of unique, isolated area, what is like the main budgetary expense?
Well, I mean, it's time. Time is the biggest expense on movies, and
Ready to go, then something went wrong, and 15 guys with tool belts would descend on it. All of them been paid quite a bit of money and fix it. It takes about 6-7 minutes. We go, how many thousands of dollars did we just lose while this thing was repaired? That's just the way it is. You're constantly under stress. You're racing against that. You're racing against the sun setting, because when the sun sets,
and that's the thing that
The
about
next
even
one.
big budget movies, little budget movies, the sun is going to set, and then your day is done, and you probably won't be able to come back to that scene. So I mean that's kind of an equalizer with all movies, but the lower the budget, the less days you have.
And then at the end of the day, I was young, I don't remember, they used to go down to a restaurant here. And when the day was over, and they would wrap, and it takes time to wrap out the job, right? By the time they actually would get over to the restaurant, then they would watch the dailies.
Mount Whitney Restaurant.
yeah.
Then they would
Yeah.
start watching all the film footage from the days before. It just long days.
Long
Yeah,
days.
it's a long day.
We had a 35mm projector set up in one of the restaurants here. Every night, the projectionist would fire that thing up, and we'd sit and watch the previous day's film. Yes.
So, I know the first one is going to be like probably kind of a dumb question, but on the fifth one, when you were first called Cops, how did you feel?
Oh yeah.
Well, obviously that became a running gag as something that really got under his skin. Number one, he did not know he had another living relative, and to be called by something that inferred he was somewhat old was not pleasant for him. No.
Also, the second one. So like, what do you think was your most favorite part, especially in like 5 or 6?
To me,
Yes.
well, I will say, I'll just be brief in saying I'm not a particular fan of monster movies. That may surprise you. I mean, I can take them or leave them. I'm interested in a great character, and what these people presented. In addition, along with a monster film, were some great characters, and that's what interested me. This Bert was just amazing, and so what we tried to continue doing was something that would probably would have evolved, I think, eventually in the series, had we continued with that, was what are the private lives of these people? How are they challenged apart from the monsters? And so my hope in 5 was to present him with he's a great monster hunter. What he's terrible at is being just a normal human being. expressing emotion, dealing with anything other than his very narrow view of the world. So what I found interesting in 5, 6, and 7, just from my standpoint as an actor, was how do we take him off his mark? How do we take him out of his comfort zone? He's, in a funny way, comfortable fighting monsters. That's what he does and does well. How do we take him out of his comfort zone emotionally? And so we decided to present him with a son he didn't even know existed. Someone for whom he was responsible. He didn't want that responsibility. He didn't want anything to do with that sort of thing. And in 6, it was really dealing with his own mortality. That is to say, he was basically given a certain amount of time to live, and they had to find an antivenom to fix him, or he was going to die. It was that simple, and he finally realized, cursing it all the way, fighting that he was in mortal danger, and something had to be done about it. So I, in those particular sorts of things, I wish we had been able to work on that with these particular guys. I was trying to keep Bert, just take him out of his comfort zone, out of his safe space, emotionally, at the same time as he's fighting monsters. Because that was a given, he could do that and do that well, but where do you make a character uncomfortable? Where do you begin to see the man beneath the monster hunter? That was always interesting to me in 5 and 6.
Ron?